we realized and figured out was brands and companies, they're more than happy to sponsor influencers. They're more than happy to pay for content, especially if it's in a niche environment or whatever it may be. But if you can collectively put everyone's content together and combine the reach, combine the audience. So instead of saying, I might have a newsletter with only 100 subscribers and you might have one with 100 subscribers. Imagine we've got a bunch of all of these newsletters stuck them together and all of a sudden we had the reach of about 10,000 people. Brands are now more interested, right? Because they've got that reach and that's what they're paying for, reach.
So you can't miss this episode. Content creation, do you know much about it? More importantly, do you know how to make money from it and how it could be a really valuable option if you're looking to develop a side hustle or explore how you can use your creative talents for good and online and in your own time. So in today's session, I speak with Abdul, who is a doctor and co-founder of Peerr.io, about how he journeyed into becoming an entrepreneur and how valuable the creator economy will be, not only for doctors, but for the world, of course. All right, take a listen, and it's a really valuable episode. Let's face it, burnout amongst doctors is sky high, and we're actively seeking other ways to make the most of our transferable skills beyond the usual career pathways. Welcome to Disrupting Doctors' Careers. I'm your host, Dr. Abena Bubbs-Jones, and I'm on a mission to connect 1 million doctors across the world with the best in diverse career opportunities. Okay, so we're using Riverside, everyone, today. Riverside FM, first time, and I've got the best person to show me how to use it, Abdul.
Nice.
So, yeah, welcome to the Disrupting Doctors' Careers podcast, Abdul. It's a pleasure to interview you, as you did so me not too long ago.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to be talking specifically about content creation as a career opportunity for doctors. One thing I have noticed, I think particularly since I've been connected with you, actually, This is how it works, right? I've seen loads of doctors, not even so much doctors, say medical students as well, who are literally putting content creation as their job title. And, I'm like millennial, and so like content creation was just the thing that you did, but wasn't actually a term. Like, doing a blog or a YouTube video, like you just do that. But now like content creation is a thing. And it's also a thing to be monetized. So this is a really great opportunity for doctors who are looking to diversify their skill sets and use some of that for great impact, using online, social media and beyond. And you're the person to talk about it. So welcome. And I also haven't mentioned so far that you are the co-founder of Peerr, which is a booming platform for content creators. So let's start from the beginning, Abdul. You are a doctor, right? Tell us, why are you a doctor to start off with? Why did you go into medicine?
Well, thank you for the invitation into the podcast. I know I was on the other side of the table interviewing you and your story. Motivations for being a doctor, medic, sometimes I feel like I fell into the career. I'm not one of those people who at the age of 6 or 7 wanted to kind of pursue this lifelong dream of being a medic. Grew up in like standard council estates, went to a normal school in South London, was like bottom set for the first few years of secondary school.
Can I just ask, what is a standard council estate? Because not everyone knows what a standard council estate is.
So council estate is essentially big blocks of buildings, jam-packed full of people who probably don't have the best socioeconomic background. They probably don't have the best careers that you'd see as aspirational. And it's kind of an environment which getting a job in like the highest level would have been like getting an office job. Like I remember for my dad, if you could work at the council, that would be like amazing. Like that's a secure, sturdy job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like admin was kind of the highest level of, our aspirations.
So talking about, obviously, what is your ethnic background and what generation are you when it comes to immigrants?
Yeah, so my parents are originally from Bangladesh. So both my parents came to the UK when they were kind of teenagers.
Right, I see.
And then obviously we were kind of born and brought up here.
Yeah.
So yeah, they kind of, as soon as they came to the UK, they didn't have the opportunity to study further. It was more to kind of start working, help provide for the family. You can imagine, loads of brothers and sisters all cramped up in like a 2-bedroom flat, which is where we grew up.
Yeah.
So just going to university and stuff like that wasn't even in the picture, to be honest. It was just get through school, get like a
Hmm.
decent job, help support the family.
So yeah, how? I mean, one of the things that I've observed and is real, especially if you are from an immigrant background like myself. My parents are
Yeah.
Caribbean. They Jamaica and Nevis. If anyone knows Nevis, St Kitts and Nevis. They were brought up here, so they came here when they were very young, um,
Hmm.
and I am the first doctor in the family. Just thinking, I am the first doctor and probably only doctor, medical doctor that is, in the family. And I see that a lot of families, especially from ethnic backgrounds, it's all about, get the best job you can, the most
Mm.
secure job you can. And that's usually doctor, dentist, accountant, lawyer, those jobs that in the day, say about 20, 30 years ago, were seen as very secure, well-paying jobs. So it's interesting that you grew up in a culture where it's like if you get an office job, you're made. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about how you essentially punched above your own weight in some ways.
Yes. Yeah.
I won't get
I,
into medicine. That's really fascinating. I'd love to hear more about that.
yeah. No, I do agree. Like, in the South Asian community, kind of the tree of doctor, banker, lawyer, engineer is kind of the go-to. But yeah, looking back, I don't know why that wasn't kind of like proposed to me as like a career choice, which is interesting. If anything, my mom wanted me to be like a religious scholar. So like even on the opposite end of the spectrum, because so kind of coming back to the story. So I was in secondary school, kind of up until year 9, kind of just coasting along, really no aspirations, just messing around. And I remember in year 9, I don't know if they do it now, but you had to sit SATs, and I
Mm-hmm.
did so badly, like awful. And it was maths. I remember I was the type of guy, like I used to get nervous sitting exams. I wasn't comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it. And then I think my mom kind of took me to the side and said, like, I think at the time we knew GCSEs was super important. Like we knew, like, to get a job, to do well in life, you need to do well in GCSEs. So she took me to the side and said, look, you need to kind of pay attention, to do well in your GCSEs. And if you do well in GCSEs, you can come up with a good job. You have like a stable career. And what happened was one of my form tutors recommended I needed a tutor. Obviously, I'm not the smartest person in the room, so I needed the extra help. And she recommended a company and a guy in particular. And that's when things probably started to change for me. So this tutor I had was a city banker who went to Harvard to study maths. And all of a sudden, once a week, he used to come to our house, or I used to go to his office or his house to study maths and science. And it felt like I entered a whole new world.
I mean, I just wanted to interrupt you there. I think that's interesting because it sounds like you had a massive failure
Yeah.
moment, which we all do.
Yeah.
That's how most of these journeys start, right? We failed
Yeah.
massively or crisis massively, and it's great how it's like, right, you need some proper support. So,
Yeah.
how did your parents manage to find this guy, and what was in it for him? You know what I mean?
So,
Like, it sounds amazing, this guy. So,
yeah.
like, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. We, so, you hear about tuition and tuition
Mm,
centers. We weren't a big fan. I was never a big fan. But it was my form tutor. I remember it was parents' evening. The form tutor was called Mrs. Clark. I still remember her, and she said, "Hey, Abdul's got potential. I think he will benefit immensely from having a tutor." And obviously, I remember still being there with my dad. He's like, "We don't know any good tutors. We only know community centers, and they're not that great." I was talking about, it's probably like a good 10, 15 years ago, by the way. So she said, "This is the number of someone that I've recommended before. He seems to be doing super well. All the students he's taught so far have done well in their GCSEs." So he's like, "All right, cool." And I remember at the time he charged like just over 30 something pounds an hour, which was a lot of money. And you have to do like 2 lessons at the time. And my dad was like, "Do you know what? It's worth the investment." The reasons as to why he did it was because his dad was a professor of chemistry, and
mm,
it was a thing for them to kind of give back, to help other people to study. And he really enjoyed teaching. So I think he said his passion was actually teaching, but he just ended up becoming like a city banker. Yeah, so
Yeah, there's the money and
it's
then there's the passion,
yeah, so
right?
like,
So,
and you can imagine he was also Southeast Asian
right,
from like an
yeah,
educated background, so he went
yeah,
into kind of those the trio of what is aspirational.
yeah.
But doing the lessons with him, and so what was the cool thing about him? It wasn't just kind of like read through the CGP revision guides. I don't know if people do them anymore, but they're really good books. He used to kind of talk about careers, aspirations, what do you want to do in life. He knew I'd come from this kind of council estate background, and he's like, if you put, I think it was to keep me motivated to study. He was like, look, you can really get yourself into a good career, you can earn a lot of money, you can support your family, you can do all of these wonderful things, you can travel. uh, and then for some reason something just clicked in my head, and I just thought, you know what, I want to be like him. I want to have one of these
Mm,
careers. I want to do really well in my GCSEs. I enjoyed studying and learning with him. So at school I wasn't really learning. It was with him and at home where I was really
mm,
studying, going through past papers, learning the
mm-hmm,
theory. And then I think you look through things in a different lens. So come to year 10, year 11, we also knew someone after a very long time at our school that got into medicine at King's.
mm-hmm,
And then his brother was in our class, and then he was like, yeah, my brother just managed to get himself into King's. He's doing medicine. And I was like, wow, what's this medicine
mm,
thing? And then I went back to my tutor, and then that's kind of where kind of this whole concept of medicine kind of started to brew. But even then I wasn't kind of willing to pursue it, or kind of was up for it. Like, I was easy kind of going, didn't really too
mm,
mind too much. um, but yeah, long story short, managed to do well in my GCSEs. And then this thing of, automatically at the time, anyone that did well in school and GCSEs or even A levels were kind of signposted to become doctors and medicine. And it
mm,
felt like if you didn't pursue medicine, it would be such a waste of talent because you did really well in
mm.
exams.
And
And
that was
then
like one
from
of the
then,
only things you could do, really, if
yeah,
you're
right.
clever.
So yeah, it's automatically assumed like, hey, you did really well
You're
in
clever, do
GCSEs, you're going to
medicine.
become a doctor, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I remember telling my parents, and like, yeah, go for it. And then this idea kind of grew in my head of kind of pursuing medicine. And then you kind of go into this tunnel vision of like, I'm going to do what it takes to get into med school. At the time, we didn't really know anyone that went to med school. Even doing the UCAS application was like a challenge. I
yeah.
remember sitting in the sixth form common room when we were trying to figure this thing out, trying to get references from my tutors. And I don't know. That's why I feel like sometimes I kind of fell into it somehow. And I was super cool with not getting into medical school as well at the same time. Just knowing, like, what are the chances of someone like me going to med school. But luckily, managed to get into the interview stages, did well when, was fortunate enough to go to King's.
Wow. Congratulations. I mean, I think that's such a powerful story about your journey into medicine, especially coming from a, disadvantaged
Yeah.
socioeconomic background and as the child of immigrant families. And so I wonder, and this is going to be my next question, I wonder how that shaped what you're doing now. So jumping forward, we're talking more about, the creator economy. You are the
Yeah.
co-founder of Peerr, which is it's an amazing platform. If you haven't seen it, guys, go
Mm.
to Peerr. That's PEERR.io. So that is, well, originally it was for healthcare professionals, and sharing content, educational content around that. But also now, recently, you've actually expanded to any professional.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about why did you start this platform?
So Peer is, I don't know if it was an accident, but it was kind of learnings from the stuff we did before. So to really understand the story of Peer, we kind of have to go back to the original time where we stepped into the world of content creation, the creative economy. So went for King's, graduated. I did super bad in the SJT exams, like really bad, right? So
Another opportunity, it sounds like. I see where this is going. It starts with you doing really badly in exams.
yeah, so people know. So SJT counts as 50% of your kind of final ranking in terms of
So for
where you're
those people that
placed.
don't know what SJT is, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So the SJT is a situation judgment test which you sit at the end of medical school, and it's essentially a bunch of scenarios they throw at you as a clinician or as a doctor. In terms of, it's always stuff like, a colleague comes in drunk, or a colleague comes in and you've noticed he's been malicious or he's assaulted someone. what's the process, what do you do, and you have to rank it as the most appropriate, the least appropriate. You can imagine I probably did everything wrong, right?
You
I
punch him in
probably
the face. That's all you
yeah.
say.
So I don't know if my background or anything had to
Mm.
play with it, but I did it all wrong. And the funny thing is, so obviously the podcast I deal with my co-host who is AMS, and to describe him, he was kind of the first centile medical student, top of the class. I was at the bottom, and I like to say we kind of met in the middle, and we kind of averaged out. So he did well. He got into the most competitive deanery in London, so he was set to go. We were at the time super keen on becoming surgeons, so we didn't really care about the content creator, the economy, or anything like that. It was head down, get into kind of surgical training. He wanted to do cardiothoracics, I wanted to do orthopedics. And lo and behold, I kind of do really bad in the SJT. And a few weeks later, they kind of release your results. And I realized I had to move out to Coventry. So this is the first time I'm moving away from friends and family, 100 miles away from home to Coventry. And it was like a massive culture shock. So like you can imagine, I was kind of like looked after at home, pampered, had everything, done for me to a certain degree, right? And now all of a sudden I'm living out by myself. I need to do everything. And one of the things that I found difficult was adjusting. I think, to be fair, I probably was homesick. Imagine you're an F1, you're coming home after on calls, after night. Sometimes there's no one in the flat. You're really struggling. You're really adjusting to it. And throughout med school, I was quite active, involved in loads of societies. We were part of like a charity called Maternal Day Association. And at one point, I just thought, do you know what? I really need to do something different, just to keep me going, just to keep my mind busy. Otherwise, I'm just gonna hate it here. No offense to people in Coventry, yeah, but it is a different. I felt my life slow down as I went into Coventry for the first time.
I think
Like,
I just want to touch upon that point, because actually we have very similar stories where like you moved from London to Coventry,
yeah,
I moved from London to Blackburn, and we
yeah,
both were like, "What the hell is this?"
is that yeah? So you've been there, that feeling of like, damn. And you know what was so sad? I felt I smashed that exam. I left the exam hall early and
Oh
I thought, you know what? I
no!
smashed it. And every time you think you smashed the exam, most likely you didn't, right? Especially in med school. So, I'm in Coventry, and it turned out to be like a blessing in disguise. I met some awesome people. I was still quite on it in terms of surgery. My first rotation was gen surge, managed to get loads of theatre time. You can imagine there's small DJs out there, 5, 6 o'clock, the consultant's grabbing you by the collar. Hey, I need your help with this emergency laparoscopy. There's no one else here. Compared to AMS, who was barely getting any theatre time in like a busy central London hospital. But yeah, coming back to the story before I digress, I really wanted to do something different. And it was like a random phone call. I still remember it, 4 o'clock in the morning, to AMS, who was on holiday after his honeymoon. So he was on his honeymoon. He just got married. And it was like, hey, do you know what? Let's do something. We've got a story we can share. We feel like a lot of people resonate this story that may have come from, disadvantaged backgrounds like us. Hopefully we can inspire and motivate people. And it was purely to be a passion project. So no idea of monetizing, earning money, anything like that. It was, let's do something where we can share our story. The problem was we wanted to do YouTube, but we didn't know how to video edit. We didn't have any cameras. So we thought, oh man, we can't do YouTube. What's the next best thing? So the next best thing happens to be podcasting, because it's just audio recording. And we kind of spend like a good few hours on that night, kind of speaking on the phone, talking about the things we can do. I even did like a mock intro to the kind of opening show and all of that jazz. And yeah, so we started to kind of record the podcast. I used to come down to London every weekend.
So this is scrubbed in.
So yeah, it's a scrubbed in podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, so end of F1, beginning of F2, the scrubbed in podcast was kind of born. And the premise of it initially was, we want to share our story, our journey, life as an F1, in a podcast format, purely as a passion project, purely just to keep ourselves active, and the hope that it helps someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Problem was, we were so junior in our career, we ran out of stories to tell. There's only so many weekends and on-calls and nights you can talk about. So then we came to a bit
I
more...
challenge you on that one. And actually, I'll probably jump forward and back with regards to the
Yeah.
creator economy. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I've found out more about through you is the creator economy, and actually how popular it is amongst medical students. And I
Yeah.
came across a number of YouTube pages by medical students,
Yeah,
and they can really find a whole
I
lot of
know.
content that they're going to talking about, a whole lot,
They
and
squeeze
stuff
it.
that's actually like really addictive to
Yeah,
watch.
I
So
know.
yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
So obviously, I can't remember. It might have been like 2018, 2019, or before that even. So we're sharing our stories. We're trying, like you said, we're trying to squeeze out as much content as possible in terms of episodes, but we're struggling. We did a good bunch of episodes, to be fair. And by that time, we also managed to be like, hey, do you know what? Since we're going down this creator economy or this content creation role, let's pick up the skill. And I remember I was learning how to kind of video edit. We had to borrow cameras, we borrowed mics, we borrowed one of our mates' office space. And then we thought, hey, do you know what? We had a good response. And we thought, do you know what would be cool is if we brought on other people to share their story. And that's when it kind of, the Scrubbed show kind of really took off, because, we brought on our friends initially, and then it kind of, the guests got a bit more renowned, people that were super established, really killing it in their field, to where we are now, where it's like people like yourselves that are, carving out a niche, a space for themselves, really successful health tech founders, entrepreneurs, or like world leading surgeons. So that was the kind of the Scrubbed In show. We're kind of putting out a story each week, and then COVID struck, and then you can imagine medical education came to a halt. Everyone's kind of on the front line. I was on ITU at the time, and I remember I wanted to go into my GP rotation, but they held everyone back just to get as many people on the kind of most sore areas. And we thought, hey, do you know what? We've got this podcast. People seem to be listening to it. Why don't we help with the medical education? Loads of people are doing webinars and kind of like sessions and presentations. And we thought, do you know what? We're not really a big fan of those stuff. Loads of people doing it. Why don't we stick to what we enjoy most? By this time, we fell in love with audio. All podcasting was such a fruitful thing for us. We really enjoyed the creative process. So we basically did what we called pod cases, where it's like 15 to 20-minute stories of people, clinical scenarios that medical students, particularly those in placements, can kind of listen in. And then we did like a quiz on the Instagram using the poll feature. Everything was scrappy, like the whole thing was scrappy. But it was nice. It was the first time it was kind of audio driven learning. So imagine you stick in your headphones and you get a scenario of like a 64-year-old chap comes into A&E with chest pain. It was a different way of learning, and people loved it. We were getting like thousands of downloads, like 10, 20, 30,000 downloads from these podcasts. And then we did the quiz on Instagram to just kind of reinforce that knowledge. And then we were like, hey, do you know what? Why don't we turn this into an app and then monetize it so we can get better gear, better equipment? And we're like, hey, do you know what? So we kind of went down the route of finding a developer, building out this app. We've already tested it with the podcast on Instagram. We launched it. That did really well. Thousands of downloads. People are paying for it. And then this is where probably people are more interested, where the story of Peerr kicks in. So what happened was we launched this app and people could submit cases and quizzes, and they'll send it in, they'll email it, or they'll kind of WhatsApp over to me, having spent hours on end on doing it. But when you went onto the podcast app, which is still live, people can kind of look at it if they want, if they're still interested. It felt like this was still a scrubbed in product. It felt as if me and Ams were still creating those cases and quizzes and content. And I don't know if people were annoyed, but it felt as if they weren't getting the acknowledgement they deserved. And it came to like, how do we compensate you? And medics, you probably know, is they really don't know what the value is sometimes. They really don't know how much to charge for a piece of content or piece of work outside of their 9 to 5 day job.
Mm-hmm.
And we could see the creator economy booming. We're seeing a lot of people creating content online. Loads. To be fair, every other medical student has a YouTube channel now anyway, right?
Yes.
And we thought, like, yeah, they either like Instagram or YouTube, right? And we're like, hey, do you know what? People had an appetite of now creating content for themselves, meaning they wanted to have their own bio, they really wanted to have their profile picture, they really wanted the world to know that this individual created this content and acknowledgement is given to them, and they really wanted to kind of earn some sort of money for it. And for a lot of people initially, it wasn't about the money, it was the passion of teaching, the passion of getting involved in something novel. And you probably remember in med school, like this stuff was non-existent. Like you'd write questions for existing question banks and it was like a privilege if they published it, right? Whereas now, like you use a sentence that someone wrote, you better have their name and picture and the whole bio there. Like people want that acknowledgement. So you could see where the world was going, right? We knew like, hey, do you know what? Like there really needs to be a platform for medics to create content where they can also earn money.
Mm.
So we're like, do you know what? Stop it. We're going to stop podcasts and pivot into Peerr. So Peerr, obviously, in the beginning was a platform where anyone that had a passion for teaching could go create a profile, share quizzes. And the way it worked was every time someone did a quiz, you get paid for it rather than this flat fee. And it was this, you're earning money every month as people did more and more quizzes.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, it kind of grew to other modalities of teaching or
Mm-hmm.
sharing content. So blogs and articles, which is probably the most popular one, and more recently courses and
Mm-hmm.
coaching. But the premise has always been to give creators a channel, a platform where they can create content, build a brand, earn money, build that community. And it's kind of taken off since then.
I think that's a really fascinating story about how it's come to be, how it is today. Um, I've got a lot of questions on the back of
Yeah.
that, as you can imagine. And I guess I'm going to focus actually more on let's talk about it. People are going to be listening to this podcast because they're looking at other career options and ways to kind of side hustle, right? So
Yeah.
how does the business model work when it comes to creating content and earning money?
So the business model is like super simple. Obviously, you knowing me with all those failures, I'm not trying to do anything complicated here. So what we figured out, the articles is a good way to explain it. What we figured out is when you embark on the content creation journey, let's say the easiest way for clinicians and medics is writing blogs and articles, right? And putting it out in the world or having your newsletter. It takes a really long time to start monetizing a newsletter. And that's because you really need to get loads of subscribers. You really need to build that audience. You really need to get that reach. What we realized and figured out was brands and companies, they're more than happy to sponsor influencers. They're more than happy to pay for content, especially if it's in a niche environment or whatever it may be. But if you can collectively put everyone's content together and combine the reach, combine the audience. So instead of saying, I might have a newsletter with only 100 subscribers and you might have one with 100 subscribers, imagine we got a bunch of all of these newsletters stuck in together and all of a sudden we had the reach of about 10,000 people. Brands are now more interested, right? Because they've got that reach and that's what they're paying for, reach. And we thought on Peerr, if people can contribute articles and they don't need to go out and kind of design their newsletter, they don't need to build their own website, they don't need to build their own platform, they just share the content. And collectively, if we can go out to the brands and companies and say, hey, do you know what? On the platform, there's thousands of people reading all these different articles. Do you want to advertise your company? So they'd basically pay to have something sponsored or they pay to have an ad running. And the money we got from those ads, we then share with the creators, depending on the number of views, the number of engagement, the number of time it's been shared. And the beauty of it was, and I think one of the things we're quite happy about was a lot of people earned their first dollar or their first pound online through Peerr, especially clinicians. And these are people that may wouldn't have earned anything for a long time. Whereas all of a sudden you're churning out a piece of content, you might do well, and you're earning something. And we know it's not life changing amount. You probably pay for a coffee or a lunch, but it's collectively working together, collectively putting out that content, getting that reach, and leveraging it, and
Mhm.
allowing these creators to get paid.
So it's about community and
Yeah.
collaboration, and yeah, so it sounds quite sustainable.
Yeah, so hopefully, if people, continue showing valuable content, people are benefiting from it, and we can go out and show these brands like these are the people you want to target, you want to get in front of.
Hmm.
Then yeah, hopefully it continues working. And then the second model now is we're now allowing people to create courses, do coaching sessions, and then you can kind of pay to access those features. But the key thing is to create this economy, this ecosystem where the money generated is kicked back to the creators to let them kind of not worry about earning, not worry about going out to different brands and companies, but focus on what they do best, and that's teach and share knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, creator economy is definitely expanding. I've seen it on
Yeah,
even, well, obviously, YouTube is essentially a creator
yeah,
economy, but it's really picked up in recent times when talking about how much money goes back to the creators themselves. But still, I mean, how much of a long game are these things realistically? So you talked about earning a little bit, if it does reasonably well, like how much work does someone really need to do to say, actually, I can earn a reasonable side hustle from this, whereby it's more than a coffee, it's more like
Yeah.
half my mortgage. Do you know what I mean? Per
Yeah,
month.
for sure.
Or like a lot of people, I can leave my job and do
Yeah.
this. Do you know what I
So
mean? That's because that's
yeah,
what a lot of people are aiming for as well.
yeah. So we have a theory around that where it's obviously the dream for lots of creators is kind of, yeah, I want to create content, I want to leave my day job. We feel the future in terms of the creator economy or well for, so we're focusing on professionals. We know there are lots of people that enjoy their day jobs as
Mm-hmm.
well. And not everyone wants to be a full-time content creator because that
Mm-hmm.
itself comes with its own responsibilities and pressures.
Yeah.
We see the future as the vast majority of professionals will also be content creators on the side. It will just be something they do. And it may not necessarily be for money. It may just be a passion thing. It may be, and I'm sure we'll come on to it, content creation has an immense amount of value and benefits outside of the money in terms of personal brand, opportunities, exposure, credibility. And for us, we really want it to be a platform where, you know, if you're fortunate to be able to leave your day job, if you really hate it and earn money as a creator, then fair enough. But we want it to be a place where it's an environment where you can share content, but you probably still continue your 9 to 5. You don't necessarily leave it. And in terms of increasing the amount of money you can earn, one of the reasons why we introduced courses and coaching, which are high ticket items where you can earn a bit more money, is you can sell a few courses. If you price it at the right amount, you can do coaching, and then you can then say, hey, do you know what, Baina, it covers half your mortgage. And it's basically guiding. If you go to Peerr now and onto any profile, it basically eases you into the world of content creation. So it's write an article or two, earn a bit of money. If you really want to take it a notch up, start doing coaching. If you really want to take it a bit higher, then do courses. Sit down, spend some time, build out a course, charge, you can be £10, it can be a few £100s, and get that kind of passive income thing moving. And we move you across this creator journey if you really want to go down that route. And the beauty of it on Peerr is it's all in one platform. So you don't need to go to one platform for coaching. You don't need to go to a different one for courses, and you don't need to go to yet a different one for newsletters and kind of articles.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's doable. It means we just need to work super hard and kind of get that economy, that ecosystem going, similar to YouTube, right?
Mm. Mm. I mean, I think it's really fascinating, and obviously you've identified a real niche for professionals to use the platform. I mean, what other examples do you have of platforms for content creators that doctors could also explore as an option?
So I've recently become a big fan of LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn felt a bit too professional for me. It felt a bit too corporate. So for us, we've had phases. So there was a time we loved Instagram. And that's where we kind of grew the brand, where we started. And it was like a really fun place. You're sharing images, you're doing stories. And then we felt like the stuff we were doing probably didn't fit Instagram. Then we jumped onto Twitter, and we really loved Twitter. We loved kind of the short, concise. It felt like you're reading a book, as when you're going through your feed and you're learning the best from the people, right? And then more recently, when we realized that the people that we're trying to target, the people we're trying to encourage to become content creators are professionals, that's when we kind of jumped in on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is an incredible place, and I think it's very good for doctors. I'm starting to see more and more clinicians join on to LinkedIn. Um, and it's the easiest place because it's a very supportive environment. There's loads of clinicians on there. All it takes is sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your insights. Um, and it's really good for personal branding, credibility, kind of showing your passions. Um, and I think, what the advice I'd give to people that want to become content creators is find the platform you feel most comfortable with, where you feel that your community is there. Because for some clinicians, they don't want to write articles and posts. They might be visual people, right? And YouTube or Instagram might be the one, or maybe some people don't have all the time in the world. They want to do short bursts of information. Twitter, but for me at the moment, LinkedIn seems to be at the top of my list in terms of social platforms.
Great. And how would a doctor say monetize their efforts on LinkedIn or a platform like LinkedIn?
So monetizing a platform for like LinkedIn, so is slightly difficult. Um, Hence why we built Peer. It's like in a way like a monetizable LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
right? The way to monetize content or kind of go down this creator economy route where you are earning money is the most powerful thing you can do is two things: is build distribution and build an audience, because they are the people at the end of the day. Either you will be selling products to or services, or companies will be interested in accessing through you. So let's say you're on LinkedIn and you're posting loads of articles or posts or kind of your thoughts, and you're really garnering this kind of big audience and community. You may then launch your own newsletter, and or you may do like a course, or you may do coaching services, because over a period of time you've really established your authority, you've really established your credibility. You may be so AI is popping right now, right? So let's say you are a clinician, you're really into AI, you're learning about all the cool things about AI, you're out there posting things, and maybe you then think, hey, do you know what, now it's time for me to monetize. You can go down the newsletter, get different AI companies to sponsor that content. You can do coaching services, consulting services to other companies that are looking to get AI or get a clinical input for a health tech company. You can do a course on understanding AI. There's loads of ways of monetizing. But I think the advice I would give is, before you start monetizing off the back, spend some time really building a community, building an audience, building those distribution channels, because that's what's valuable to both you as an individual and to companies that want to may sponsor some of your content. Because one of the biggest ways creators make money is through brands and sponsorships, if they're not selling the products directly.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that leads to my next question. So, I mean, obviously, Peerr was built so that content creators don't have to worry about who they have to go out to. But if you are someone who's like really building your personal brand and looking for sponsors or partners, I mean, what would you advise? I mean, like, for example, what do you do when it comes to looking for the right, deciding what are the right partners for your platform? Like, how do you make that decision? How do you actually do the outreach? Like, what advice would you give to doctors who are looking to do that?
So one of the best pieces of advice I got when we were starting to look for sponsors, when we were starting to monetize the podcast, which was, I think, more kind of relatable to people that are kind of starting this creator journey. So we've been doing the podcast for like a year or two, and then we realized, hey, we've got a good reach, good number of downloads. Let's reach out to companies and see if they're willing to sponsor podcast episodes. And one of my friends he's like a Citibank ex-Goldman Sachs banker, who's like a big YouTuber now. He said a lot of creators think the sponsors will come to them. They think, hey, I'm doing really well. All of these brands are going to be dropping you loads of emails. They're going to be, at your feet. It doesn't work like that. You really need to graft in the beginning and go to these companies and sponsors and really tell them why they should sponsor your podcast, or why they should sponsor your article or your YouTube video. And the best way to do that, and we'll use our example. Our example is probably a good way because it's real. We had loads of medical students listening to the podcast. We knew that medical education platform, or quiz banks will be interested in getting in front of these medical students. So what we did is we made a list of all the different question banks. We approached them and said, hey, this is the Scrubbed In Show. We do XYZ. We have X amount of downloads. Would you be willing to sponsor a podcast episode? And we're going to give you a shout out. We're going to run an ad. We're going to stick your logo on the podcast art cover, and really selling it to them. And then they'll kind of be like, send more details, tell us the demographics and screenshots, and you do all of that jazz. And then you kind of get your that first deal. I remember the first podcast episode we sponsored was like £20 or something. And I was like, whoa, £20. Someone's going to...
That's a really great start.
Yeah. And shout out, it was Quesmed. I remember it was Quesmed. Oh, it's like £20, £25. And I was like, whoa, AMS, bro, we're going to be rich. We're going to kill it overnight. And it was like, then things kind of changed a bit. We're like, hey, do you know what? This thing is real. You can make money and stuff like that. But even then, we weren't too fast about the money, because we knew like it was still sensible, like, but it showed that you can monetize content. So anyone listening out there that are worried they won't monetize the content or it doesn't work, it does work. It's just sometimes it takes a while, and we're so used to seeing kind of the Ali Abdals, the Karma Medics with like millions of subscribers absolutely killing it.
It took them a journey in itself, right? They started from scratch too.
Oh, of course. So yeah, if you look into
challenges.
Yeah, so like Ali Abdal was making videos while a medical student for many, many years.
Yeah.
And then recently took off. Even Karma Medic, like he was, churning out videos after. They got hundreds of videos. So obviously people see the overnight success. But coming back to when reaching out to companies or brands to sponsor, it's literally from identifying the type of content you're putting out, identifying the people that are consuming that content, then going out and seeing, okay, who are the type of companies or people that are looking to get in front of this audience, in front of these peoples? Are they willing to make, pay money for it? And then just going out and cold emailing, introductions, just saying, hey, I've got XYZ, I have access to this demographic or this population. Would you be interested in us kind of showcasing your stuff, or would you be interested in doing a sponsorship or a brand deal or something like that, and taking it from there?
I think that's really, really valuable and awesome, simple advice, but
Yeah,
I think really, really good point on how to then do the outreach. And obviously, through those relationships, you can get bigger deals
yeah, of course, you
as
leverage it, right?
your community grows and find other ways to get sponsorship. And usually, once you've got your foot in the door, they're your best
Yeah,
customers, really, isn't it? It's easier to get more money from
yeah,
the same people than it is to find new people or new
yeah,
companies, right? So
yeah.
I think that's really awesome. And just rounding off, so I mean, already you've given so many amazing bits, like golden nuggets, when it comes
Mm.
to content creation. And yeah, I'd love to go back to what piece of advice would you give for doctors who are interested in just getting started and going down the content creator route?
Just get started. I know a lot of medics and clinicians are keen to create content. I remember I did like a LinkedIn thing the other day in terms of what seems to be the barrier to getting you to click the post button or publish a video or post an article, or release a podcast. And I think maybe there's loads of reasons. It's perfectionism.
I was going
Maybe
to say
medics
that's
do.
probably the biggest one. I mean, I've just started a new newsletter which I haven't sent out yet,
Yeah,
and oh my god, I've done it about three, 4 times,
yeah,
and it's just getting longer and longer. And it's like, no, I want it
yeah,
to be short, and it's the enemy of the good.
yeah. So the advice is just do it. Like the first few pieces, the first few videos, the first few episodes will probably be crap compared to what you can potentially do if you keep at it. Um, and I remember it's a saying, like, if you're not embarrassed of your first product or your first thing, you've launched too late, or it's too late, right? Um, and I think
Interesting
it
point.
doesn't need to be perfect. The beauty in the content creation or the creative economy is the imperfections we bring as individuals. Like, there's loads of YouTubers out there, but it's you, your unique way, your unique journey that allows you to maybe explain things differently, that someone may resonate with your video as to someone else's video, or your piece of content compared to someone else's. It's put it out there, be confident, be open, learn from feedback, learn how to improve. And there's so many tools now, even like this AI stuff, it gets you over the kind of the writer's block. If you don't have any ideas, like an example is I was struggling with the title of an article. I put it into AI. I was like, give me an article title, and they gave me like loads of banging articles. I'd like titles, and I used one, right?
I have
So
got into ChatGPT recently. I have to
yeah,
say, it is really good.
it's so good, right? It's like it helps you in that process. So
Yeah.
there's really no excuse to not create content. And I would say, even if you hate it, and you really want to be, let's put it in a different viewpoint, in the sense that you might not be a big fan of content creation. You might find it a bit embarrassing, you might find it a bit cringy, you might think it's like a fluffy thing to do. But let's say at the same time you really want to become an upcoming big consultant surgeon in a big fancy teaching hospital. Content creation is probably your best bet in getting those roles, because you want to be out there, you want to kind of cement that relationship, that credibility, that authority. When you create content online, you increase the surface area of opportunities to land your way. We've spoken to loads of consultants, and they said the future are these hybrid roles where you need to learn content, you need to learn how you use technology to improve your department, you reduce waiting times, you increase the budget, all of that jazz, right? So
So it's
if
about
you're not out
becoming an
there,
influencer, isn't it? It's about becoming an
yeah,
influencer, and organizations, hospitals, they need influencers because
of
influencers
course,
bring in money. They
yeah,
bring in interest, they bring in projects, they bring in, a whole sorts of things that really help them to develop really great high quality services. So if
yeah,
you're coming in with your brand, your personal brand that no one can take away from
yeah,
you, that gives you extra massive leverage in getting a job or an opportunity, right?
yeah, definitely. And like, yeah, at the forefront of people's minds, there's so many times opportunities have come where we can't take them up, but because I've seen individuals tweet about it or post about it, I'm like, hey, this guy's interested in this, and you just connect them, right?
Hmm.
And that individual, just because they put themselves out there, landed a project, landed an internship,
Yeah.
landed
Yeah.
so many opportunities.
Yeah, and they may not be like better than say the next person, but what they are better
Exactly.
at is just putting themselves out there.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be, sometimes you have to be frank. And I do feel, if you're not out there, if you're not creating content, there may be a chance where you do get left behind.
Yeah.
And it's not because you have a bad skill set or you don't have the right experience. It's just, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. All of those type of sayings really do come true, and we've seen it countless number of times where like loads of opportunities. You can have someone that maybe doesn't have the best skill set, maybe doesn't have the best experience, but what they did was they were vocal, they were out there, they were connecting, and they used one opportunity to get the next one. And by the end of it, they're really seasoned.
Yeah.
And then you have someone who may have been ripe for the job, but because no one knows about them, they're not getting it, and they're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And they end up, hating their career. They hate the day job. They really want to leave. They want to do something different. And then when they do want to go do something different, they don't have the experience and opportunities to land those roles, which I'm sure you probably know a lot more than me about.
So I think all doctors need to learn how to be their best self-marketers in a way that works
sure.
for them. I have to be very specific about that. It doesn't mean you have to dance on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok. There are loads of doctors dancing on TikTok. They don't need to do that. They can if they want to, but they don't need to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And
I think I was going to say, I agree. Yeah, I agree. The one thing I did want to say before coming on was you don't need to follow and see what other people are doing. And you may see people going viral on TikTok and think that's the next platform to be on. Like I said before, I think find the platform that resonates with you the most. Find the platform where you want to be part of that community and build there and just build and grow. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take time, but I can promise you it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's end it on there. Thank you so much for your time, Abdul. I've really learned a lot from this time with you on the content creator economy, which is the current, it is the future. I can see it happening as we speak, especially from a generational perspective too. But just to emphasize, this opportunity is not just for doctors who have made it in their careers. It's for anyone at any stage. And the key thing here, from what I understand, is that you need to pick something that you are passionate about, you're interested in. It's something that you would do as a hobby, and money isn't the primary gain from it for you, because the money will come. And if you're looking for a platform where the money will come, as long as you keep on producing stuff that you love, Peerr is that, right?
Yeah.
Peerr.io, everyone. See, I'm promoting it for Abdul.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah, no, you sell it better than me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way of doing that?
We're probably on all the platforms, to be fair. Maybe LinkedIn. You can drop us an email at hello@peerr.io. Instagram, the Scrubbed In Show, I think, or the peerr.io on Instagram. So yeah, just search it, Google it. It's everywhere. We need to be everywhere, right? When you're creating content,
he's everywhere.
It shouldn't be too difficult.
He's behind you right now.
I want content.
Take care. Thanks for joining us.
See you later, later.